A quiet city rocked by a confounding mystery that would leave its residents perplexed for over a quarter of a century. The cold corpse of a woman found just a week prior to Christmas. With her, some belongings and items that just added on to the growing mystery. So what exactly happened on the morning of December 18th, 1996? What was written on the cryptic notes left on the scene? And why did this case go so cold so fast? Hello everyone, my name is Vander and welcome to Vander Explains. Today on Case Closed, we are here to take a deep dive into the perplexing case of the Annandale Jane Doe, aka the Christmas Tree Lady. Let's take a trip to the small city of Annandale, Virginia. Having an area of roughly 7.8 square miles with a population of about 44,000 people. Annandale is well known for its diverse culture and it is home to the largest Korean community in Northern Virginia. So if you're looking for some authentic Korean cuisine near the DC area, then this is definitely the place to be. Annandale is described by many as a quiet and quaint suburb where people from the metropolitan area often visit to escape the hustle and bustle of city life. It is home to several beautiful parks like the Green Spring Gardens, the Hidden Oaks Nature Center, and many more natural trails. Annandale is also home to some celebrities like actor Dylan Walsh, country music performer Kelly Willis, and actor Mark Hamill. And unfortunately, it is also home to the long and cold case of the Annandale Jane Doe. So let's get started. On the early mornings of December 18, 1996, the groundskeeper who worked at Pleasant Valley Memorial Park was just doing his usual rounds around the cemetery. As he was approaching the area known as Babyland, a section where infants were laid to rest, he saw a strange figures lying on the ground unmoving. As the groundskeeper carefully approached the figure, he realized that it was that of a woman, motionless, presumably deceased. Several police officers and detectives Richard Perez and Mike Headley quickly rushed to the scene and confirmed that it was indeed the body of a woman, roughly in her 50s or 60s, with red or auburn hair. She was found laying down on a clear plastic sheet, and beside her was a small 8-inch Christmas tree, decorated with red ribbons and some ornaments. Her head was covered in a plastic bag and sealed around the neck with some masking tape. She was also found to be wearing her headphones that were plugged into a portable cassette player. She was ruled to have committed suicide by means of suffocation. As the area was cleared and thoroughly investigated, all the items found at the scene were taken into police custody for further analysis, while her body was taken into autopsy for investigation. As the police bagged and tagged all the items found at the scene, there were some items that stood out. These images are all real images of what was found at the scene that December morning. Apart from the peculiar Christmas tree, the woman also brought her backpack, some juice bottles, a bottle of brandy, a pink Minnie Mouse waist pouch, a red scarf, a cassette player containing a recording of comedian Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner doing their 2,000-year-old man routine, 2 additional cassette tapes, one of which was Jeff Foxworthy's You Might Be a Redneck, and another which was a tape of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, as well as a new roll of masking tape. On her person were some winter garment, a pair of clip-on earrings, a small women's guess watch, a 14-karat gold ring, some clear bifocals, and a strange metal beaded chain with a medic alert saying, quote, "No code, DNR, no penicillin," unquote. In medical terms, no code in DNR stands for do not resuscitate, which means that in a case of a life-threatening event, the doctor or hospital is given a directive not to resuscitate the patient. This order can only be issued by the patient or their legal guardian. Even stranger than that, 2 cryptic typewritten notes were found at the scene, and encased within each of them was a $50 bill. One note was a poem that states, quote, "Now I lay me down to sleep, soon to drift to the eternal deep. And though I die and shall not wake, sleep sweeter will be than this life I forsake," unquote. Another note was a message that says, quote, "Deceased by own hand, refer no autopsy. Please order cremation with funds provided. Thank you, Jane Doe," unquote. The notes were addressed to both the coroner and the cemetery, and was even signed off as Jane Doe. It is interesting to note that the woman chose not to disclose her own identity and instead wanted to remain anonymous. From the autopsy results, it was revealed that she has an 8-inch scar on her stomach, which was assumed to be one made from a prior cesarean section. The cause of death was confirmed to be that of a self-inflicted asphyxiation and suffocation. In her toxicology results, there were traces of diazepam, or more commonly known as Valium. This drug is usually used to treat anxiety, seizures, and insomnia, but it is also known for its sedative properties. She also had a blood alcohol level of 0.14%, which, to put into perspective, the legal blood alcohol limit in the United States is 0.08%. Having a 0.14% blood alcohol level would render someone unable to walk or stand properly. It could also cloud your memories, induce aggressive behavior, or could make you fall unconscious. All this evidence seemed to lead to the conclusion that the Christmas tree lady did in fact take her own life. But it still remained unclear. Why did she do what she did? Why then and there? What was the significance of the cassette tape or the Christmas tree? In the weeks after the body was found, tremendous efforts were made to ID the body. Local missing persons files were cross-referenced from local Annandale cases to as wide as the entire Fairfax County. DNA or fingerprints were also run to the police database, but no matches were found. Both Detectives Perez and Headley even tried to find connections between any of the children's headstones in the cemetery to Jane Doe, but no connections were evident. Detective Perez bitterly said, quote, "What makes it so frustrating is, this isn't a case where we're dealing with skeletal remains. This is a lady that somebody should recognize." Unquote. As even more weeks go by, police, investigators, and medical examiners have now taken a complete set of photographs and x-rays while also documenting finger and palm prints. A forensic odontologist also performed an examination on her teeth, and the results were entered into the National Crime Information Computer. High-resolution photos of Jane Doe were also circulated to the FBI for closer examination. This case went as far as to consulting the Immigration and Naturalization Services in case the person appears to be from a foreign country. A last-ditch effort was made and it was finally time to go public. The picture of the Annandale Jane Doe was professionally sketched and circulated countrywide in the hopes that someone would recognize her and contact law enforcement. Even through all that, the case just grew colder and colder. The circulation and focus of the case throughout the 5-year period from 1996 to 2001 slowly but surely dwindled. The case was finally iced and made into an unsolved cold case file. Even though local law enforcement were no longer putting much or if at all any resources into solving this case, there were still a handful of people on the internet trying their luck at cracking the case. Over the span of about 25 years, the story of the Christmas tree lady were still being mentioned here and there. In that time frame, records has shown that roughly 215 people have been DNA tested, but sadly, none had matched our Jane Doe. The case has also gotten some traction in missing persons forums and websites like the Doe Network, Reddit, the Unidentified, and many more platforms. People from across the world were banding together to try and piece this puzzle to solve this mystery once and for all. However, it wasn't until January of 2022 when a company from Houston called Autopsy Incorporated got a whiff of this case and decided to do their own investigation. Autopsy was a company founded in 2018 by husband and wife Kristen and David Middleman. The company specializes in forensic genealogy, specifically to resolve unsolved murders, disappearances, and identifying the unidentified descendants of murder victims. They are basically a company known for identifying Jane and John Does. Some of the well-known cold cases that Autopsy has successfully helped solve were cases like Beth Doe and Delta Dawn in 2020 and Septic Tank Sam in 2021. A little fun fact before continuing this case was that Autopsy's technology and casework were direct inspirations for the 500th episode of Law & Order SVU. So, in January of 2022, Autopsy decided to tackle the Annandale Jane Doe case. After about 4 months of digging, in May of 2022, Othram got a potential hit of an 88-year-old man living in Virginia Beach named David Meyer. Together with Fairfax PD, they went to question David Meyer, and he indeed told them that he has a sister that went missing and was last seen by him roughly 50 years ago. When showed pictures of the Christmas tree lady, he couldn't confirm that it was his sister. David's family then directed detectives to a sister living just outside of Phoenix named Annette Meyer Clough. When investigators showed Annette the color sketch of Annandale's Jane Doe, she said she was 1000% sure that this was indeed a picture of her older sister, Joyce Meyer Sommers. However, to be 100% certain, a DNA sample of Annette was sent to the lab, and Othram was able to undeniably confirm that the DNA was indeed a match. The 25-year-old mystery was slowly beginning to unravel in the wakeful eyes of the world. In an interview, Annette said, quote, "I was stunned, just stunned. The family had looked for her. They were still looking for her a year after she had died. I am relieved to know that something horrible didn't happen to her. It sounds like something she'd been planning for a long time," unquote. The Annandale Jane Doe, aka the Christmas tree lady, finally has gotten her name back, and her remaining family members were given some sense of closure. But this story isn't over just yet. Now let's take a trip back in time to honor the life of Joyce Meyer Sommers to understand her true life story. Joyce Meyer Sommers was born on July 20th, 1927, to parents Arthur and Margaret Meyer. She was the oldest of 5 siblings and was raised on a farm in Davenport, Iowa. Her sister Annette described her as being, quote, "very creative and very smart. She was artistic," unquote. Joyce loved collecting silk and nylon stockings. She would make parachutes and parachute cords with her 4-H club during the war. She was made queen at her school in 1945, as well as a sodality prefect. She later attended Iowa State University, where she worked for Iowa Homemaker magazine and Iowa State Daily. In university, she was pledged by a women's professional journalism honorary fraternity and participated in many clubs and societies. She loved to perform plays and recitals, and she also won prizes for poetry and editorial writing. After completing university, Joyce relocated to Los Angeles to work at 17 magazine while living with an aunt. Joyce then left the magazine around the 1950s and went to teach second-grade students at a local Catholic elementary school. This arguably was quite a stressful time for Joyce, but she was determined to succeed. Annette recalled this period in Joyce's life as being, quote, "difficult. She had 60 second graders and she didn't have a background in education. She was very meticulous, staying up until the wee hours to do lesson planning," unquote. Around that time, Joyce fell into a depression and tried to seek help from a local psychiatrist. It was believed that during her sessions, the psychiatrist had successfully encouraged Joyce to believe in herself, but at the cost of putting most of the blame on her parents. Because of this, she then began to distance herself from her family and started to feel estranged. At one point, Joyce's mother Margaret decided to visit her in California. That visit, though, instigated a 24-hour-long confrontation between mother and daughter. Joyce allegedly accused Margaret of being a bad parent, and from that day forth, she decided to cut ties with most of her family members, while only sending infrequent letters to her sister. Joyce then moved to Seattle, Washington in 1960, where she met and married James E. Sommers. The two had no children, and their relationship only lasted as far as 1977, when they decided to get a divorce. After the divorce, and now in her 50s, Joyce took a chance and headed south and settled in Tucson, Arizona. By the early 1980s, she had settled into a trailer park and was reportedly unhappy with the way her life was going. Around this time, Joyce invited all her family members to come and visit her. Everyone from her parents and siblings made their way to Arizona to meet her. There, Joyce began telling her family what had happened to her from her marriage to her divorce that finally led up to this point. Joyce then told her family members that she needed help to build or buy her a home for she did not want to live in a trailer for the rest of her life. Sadly, since their family weren't well off themselves, they told Joyce that they could not help her buy a home. From there, Joyce's demeanor was set to change, and that was the last time the family members would ever see her. No more letters, no contact, and her sister Annette described it as, quote, "She fell off the face of the earth," unquote. In the early 1990s, Joyce's siblings went out of their way to look for her and make sure she was alright. Her brother, Larry Meyer, went back to the trailer park in Tucson, only to find it abandoned. He found 4 copies of a book in the refrigerator called The Target Child, which had been written and self-published by Joyce herself. The book tells the story of Joyce's supposedly abusive childhood. Her siblings, however, were baffled as they recalled that her parents were never abusive or that any of them had suffered while growing up. After that visit, her siblings and Annette's ex-husband Clough managed to collect enough money to hire a private investigator to find out where their sister had gone. This sadly led nowhere, and the only trail that they had found was a public records evidence that Joyce might have lived in Northern Virginia, possibly in Alexandria. Though it feels like Joyce's childhood has been described by family as being warm and loving, we cannot truly understand or know what she actually felt. At the end of the day, we can only speculate why she had done what she did. So in the moments leading up to her death, we can only imagine what it must have been like. In a cold December morning, Joyce laid a plastic sheet just over Babyland. She sat down and finished off a flask of brandy with some pills of Valium. Perhaps she then drank her peach and mango juice to chase off the bitter aftertaste. She turned on her portable cassette player and placed headphones over her ears while listening to the comedy skit. She placed the notes she had typewritten next to her with the 2 $50 bills. She then reached into her backpack and pulled out an 8-inch Christmas tree and placed it right next to her. She then took a plastic bag and a roll of masking tape from her bag and placed it over her head before tying it off with the tape. She put the roll of tape back into her bag and laid down to take one final sleep. As her heartbeat slowed and her body loosened, she took her last and final breath. There lies the body of Joyce Meyer Sommers. May she rest in peace. This is a tragic story of the Annandale Jane doe and how she got her name tag. I am honestly not sure how I feel about her name getting out. On one hand, she clearly had intentions to remain anonymous, but on the other, her family could now understand what had happened and get some sense of closure. But now that her identity has been revealed, the world can finally honor her for who she was and what she has done in her life. She was 69 when she passed, and I can only hope that she is now in a much better place in the universe. I hope that this story in one way or another touched your hearts as it did mine. If you have enjoyed this video, please leave a like and possibly consider subscribing to the channel. Let me know in the comments what you think of the video and recommend me some other cases to review and explain. For now, this is Vander, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.